I'm Diane Macedo. Today on ABC News Live, a huge win for President Biden. The U.S. Senate has passed a sweeping economic package by a razor-thin majority. What it means for your health insurance and the cost of your prescription drugs. Flood warnings are in effect in several parts of the country after Denver was slammed by flash flooding overnight. People abandoned their cars in the middle of the highway, and hundreds were left stranded in Death Valley National Park, while thousands of flights have been canceled. We've got the latest. And the growing fears of a nuclear disaster in Ukraine. Officials there are blaming Moscow for a missile attack on a Russian-occupied nuclear power plant. Now, the new warning from Ukraine's nuclear agency. We begin with Senate Democrats passing that major health care, climate, and tax passage after a marathon weekend voting session. The so-called Inflation Reduction Act passed on a party-line vote, with Vice President Kamala Harris breaking the tie. It marks a significant victory for President Biden's agenda that seemed out of reach just a few weeks ago. President Biden was in Delaware this morning speaking about the bill.
Do I expect it to help? Yes, I do. It's going to immediately help. For example, no senior will have any on Medicare will have a bill more than $2,000 for drugs, no matter what the costs are. That's a big deal, changing people's lives. There's a whole range of things that are really game changers for ordinary folks. Now, some of it's not going to kick in for a little bit, but it's all good. It's really going to lower the daily. When you sit down at that kitchen table at the end of the month, you'll be able to pay a whole hell of a lot more bills because you're paying less in medical bills.
There you go. President Biden clearly happy about this. Congressional correspondent Rachel Scott has the latest.
The vice president votes in the affirmative, and the bill, as amended, is passed.
With every Republican opposed, Vice President Kamala Harris casting the tie-breaking vote. On the Senate floor, Democrats jumping to their feet, erupting in cheers, handing President Biden a political victory by a razor-thin majority, passing a sweeping economic package aimed at combating climate change, inflation, and lowering the cost of prescription drugs.
It's been a long, tough, and winding road, but at last, we have arrived.
Democrats reached a breakthrough, rallying behind a roughly $740 billion bill that would make the largest climate investment in U.S. history, provide tax credits to buy electric vehicles, lower premiums for Americans buying their own health insurance, and make prescription drugs more affordable for seniors, capping out-of-pocket expenses at $2,000. All that would be paid for by increasing taxes on top corporations. Republicans tried to derail the package during a marathon 15-hour session, suggesting changes to the legislation and pointing to one analysis that shows the bill would have little impact on inflation anytime soon.
This Inflation Reduction Act is a lie. It's not going to reduce inflation.
But after months of tense negotiations and party infighting, this is a long sought-after victory for Democrats, less than 100 days before the midterm elections.
Now, the House still has to take up this measure. That is expected to happen as early as Friday. As for when Americans will start to feel the impact of this legislation, some of this will take time. That out-of-pocket cap for prescription drugs for seniors won't go into effect until 2025. Democrats continue to insist that this will have an impact on inflation, but it won't be immediate. Diane?
All right, Rachel Scott, thanks for that. And ABC's Doreen Shaw joins me live now for more. Doreen, Democrats have admitted that this bill likely won't do much to fight inflation in the short term. So what is it expected to do, and what are the next steps?
Hi, Diane. Yeah, so the next steps, the House has to vote on it. That's expected to happen on Friday. It's expected to pass there. But as you heard Rachel say, nothing is going to be immediate. It's not expected to be immediate. And Democrats have said they're going to reduce inflation by lowering the deficit. And the bill itself, it reduces the budget deficit by $102 billion over 10 years. That's according to the Congressional Budget Office. It cuts taxes by millions. It raises taxes for wealthier folks. And all of this still isn't exactly what Democrats wanted, right? They wanted to make it easier to tax hedge fund managers. They want to raise the corporate minimum tax. They didn't exactly get those things, but they are touting the gains that they did make.
Now, the bill is the latest in a string of good news for Democrats, along with easing gas prices, encouraging job numbers, some other recent bipartisan bills the president set to sign this week. So how significant is that with midterms on the horizon, and how much will that matter if Americans don't feel the economy is improving?
Yeah, a lot of recent bills, right? You have the CHIPS Act, you have the gun safety bill. Biden recently signed a bill to protect veterans from those burn pits. He's out of quarantining. I mean, he just passed the Inflation Reduction Act through the Senate. But as you said, the midterms are right around the corner, 92 days ahead. The clock is ticking on that. And Biden has said that inflation is his #1 domestic priority. But his approval ratings, when it comes specifically to inflation, are not good. They're 29% in every single area when it comes to the economy. His numbers are underwater, and 2/3 of Americans think the economy is actually getting worse. So it's unclear exactly what's going to happen between now and the midterms. We still have some time. He's had a lot of accomplishments, but there's a lot of setbacks too when you look at the specific poll numbers and when you look at what Americans think about the economy.
And Zareen, as you mentioned, the president's out of isolation. He tested negative for COVID-19. Now he's headed to Kentucky. So what's on his agenda?
So he's there today. He's meeting the governor. He's going to visit family members who were impacted by the recent devastation there. He's going to survey the area. He's going to look at the response, and then he's going to have a briefing. And don't be surprised, by the way, if he talks about climate change. Look, this Inflation Reduction Act, it specifically addresses climate change. $370 billion in the Inflation Reduction Act is going specifically to climate change, to things like renewable energy tax credits. They want to cut 40% of carbon emissions by 2030. And there's a big emphasis on things like clean energy for homes and cars. So we'll see exactly what he says in just a little bit, and we'll carry it live, of course, and we'll talk about it after, Diane.
All right, Zoreen Shah, thanks for that. And as the president heads to those flood-ravaged parts of Kentucky today, it was another weekend of severe weather in other parts of the country. A historic rainstorm stranded hundreds of people in Death Valley, California, while flash flooding forced more than a dozen rescues in Denver yesterday, causing drivers to abandon their cars in the middle of the highway. Greg Dutra, meteorologist from our Chicago station WLS, has the latest.
Chaos on the roads in Denver. Multiple vehicles disabled in floodwaters after a strong storm moved across the area. People abandoning their cars in the middle of the highway, causing this backup as they wait for the floodwaters to subside. The driver of this car saying it was raining so hard he couldn't see the road was submerged until it was too late.
We just assisted a patient out of the water, checking another vehicle for a party possibly trapped.
First responders rescued 19 people from flood incidents throughout the city, including this person being helped from their van.
Look at that.
Water gushing down the street earlier in the day, and over the weekend, dramatic images from Death Valley National Park in California. Dangerous flash flooding after record rainfall. This video capturing those rushing waters, some 60 vehicles stuck in the mud, debris everywhere.
You couldn't drive anywhere for sure, and it was difficult to walk anywhere as well.
More than 75% of the park's annual rainfall recorded in just a few hours. Park visitors with no way to leave. Emergency crews rescuing the stranded.
It sounded like the world was ending, and then, just this rushing water everywhere in a place that's usually absolutely bone dry. It was pretty incredible.
For 5 years before moving back to the Midwest, and in that time, I had only seen a handful of occasions where rain was that heavy on the radar. About a month, even more than a month's worth of rain just over the course of 20 minutes. It really was remarkable. And this is why monsoon storms are firing along a stationary front that stretches all the way from the desert Southwest all the way into the Midwest. And it is causing flooding not only across the Denver area, but also into northern Illinois and southern Wisconsin early this morning. It is a tough start to the week, a very wet one. I'll send it back to you, Diane.
All right, Greg Dutra, thank you. And fears are growing of a nuclear disaster in Ukraine. Ukrainian officials are blaming Moscow for a missile attack on a Russian-occupied nuclear power plant just missing a building where spent nuclear fuel is stored. Now the head of Ukraine's nuclear agency is warning that the situation is, quote, out of control. Britt Clennett is in Kyiv with the latest.
Alarm over fighting at Europe's largest power plant. The facility seized by Russian forces in March lies in Energodar, 76 miles from the strategic city of Zaporizhia in the southeastern part of Ukraine. Now both sides are accusing the other of carrying out attacks there. Russian state media releasing footage of smoke pouring over the plant. And Russia's defense ministry releasing these images they claim to show the aftermath of the strikes. But Ukraine says it is Russia who is shelling the facility, using it as a military base, cover for artillery fire. President Zelensky saying no such country in the world can feel safe when a terrorist state fires at a nuclear power plant. The head of Ukraine's nuclear agency with a powerful warning.
That situation at the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant is out of control at the moment.
Petro Cotton saying if shelling there continues, the consequences could be catastrophic.
And what is the main risk, technically, all political arguments aside, to the safety of the plant?
We are very close to the situation of Fukushima, actually. And only one line which connects nuclear power plant to the grid now supplies power to the own needs of the plant. If you have this line damaged, then you have already started an event for Fukushima.
Other experts say the risk is low of a nuclear disaster like the one that happened in Japan in 2011. Well, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is pushing for international inspectors to be allowed access to the site and warning that any attack on the plant is suicidal. Diane?
All right, Britt Clennett in Kyiv, Ukraine for us. Stay safe, Britt. Thank you. And former UN Ambassador Bill Richardson told George Stephanopoulos on This Week he's optimistic about a prisoner swap between the U.S. and Russia. It's the latest effort to free Brittany Griner and Paul Whelan. Deb Roberts has more on that and other Americans entangled in the Russian legal system.
I made an honest mistake, and I hope that in your ruling that it doesn't end my life here.
Despite her 9-year prison sentence, there's renewed hope that 31-year-old Brittany Griner may soon be on her way home.
My view is that I'm optimistic. I think she's going to be freed.
Former UN Ambassador Bill Richardson telling George Stephanopoulos that Russia's open to a possible prisoner exchange.
I think it'll be 2 for 2. Involving Paul Whelan. We can't forget him. He's an American Marine.
But what about the third American, Mark Fogel? He's an educator. He's facing the prison sentence right now. His infraction was similar to Brittany Griner's. Shouldn't he be included in this?
Well, there's my foundation. We're involved with 3 other American detainees in Russia, including a POW in Ukraine. But yes, all of these that are wrongfully detained need to come home.
Fogel has not officially been declared wrongfully detained, but like Griner, the history teacher was also arrested at a Moscow airport back in August of 2021, carrying a small amount of prescribed medical marijuana. And now, news of yet another American woman in Russian custody. Sarah Krivanek, a 46-year-old Colorado school teacher. People magazine reporting that Krivanek was involved in a domestic dispute case with a Russian boyfriend. After contacting the U.S. Embassy late last year, she tried to leave the country before her trial, but was arrested by Russian authorities and has been detained with little public notice.
What stands out to me about Sarah's case is that she did seem to be forgotten, that no one was really looking for her or trying to help her that we were aware of.
Sarah's friend Anita Martinez says she was on a video call with her at the airport when she was taken into custody.
I just saw them like pulling her to stand her up, and then she was saying no, 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 and kind of a little scuffle ensued, and then I just saw a man look into her phone, and then it went dead. We've had zero contact with her, or I didn't even know where she was at for the longest time.
Anita sharing this voicemail Sarah left her.
If you don't ever hear from me again, I love you and you're my dear friend. I'm so sorry.
It's hard to know just how many Americans are being held in Russian prisons whose cases haven't had the same public attention as Griner's and Whelan's. The State Department says those numbers are fluid, but some estimates are that there could be quite a few. And of course, this is a difficult time for those negotiations with Russia, given the war with Ukraine and the U.S. hard line taken against Vladimir Putin. Diane?
Deborah Roberts, thank you. Coming up, the latest on the monkeypox outbreak spreading across the U.S. What to know if you think you've been exposed. Dr. Patel joins us live when we come back. The CDC is issuing new guidance on safer sex and also on social gatherings as the agency reports more than 7,500 cases of monkeypox nationwide. The CDC is also investigating an identified case of polio in Rockland County, New York. ABC News medical contributor and physician at Stanford Children's Health, Dr. Alok Patel, joins me live now for more on all of this. Dr. Patel, this new monkeypox guidance is really focused on avoiding physical contact with monkeypox patients. So if someone does contract monkeypox, how long does it take for you to see symptoms, and should you isolate?
Now, simply put, Diane, this is all based on an estimate. This could vary, but what the CDC estimates is that the incubation period, meaning how quickly symptoms will pop up after an exposure, could be anywhere between 5 to 21 days. Then you may have those early symptoms of fatigue, fever, headache, swollen lymph nodes for about a few days, and then that rash, that telltale rash, should pop up. Now, here's the hard part. That rash could last for up to 2 to 4 weeks, which is a period of time when people are contagious. So that's a long period of time for people to potentially have to isolate. So it comes down to seeing a healthcare professional if you have a new rash, especially if you have anyone who may be in contact with you who had monkeypox or associated symptoms.
Now, the World Health Organization recently recommended that men who have sex with men limit their number of sexual partners. But the CDC is trying to reduce the stigma surrounding monkeypox, reiterating that anyone can get it. Why is reducing stigma so important to public health, and how do you balance ensuring that the most at-risk groups are well informed without marginalizing them?
Dan, reducing stigma is paramount because scapegoating only leads to shame, stereotyping, and is nothing productive for public health. We have to learn from history. We saw scapegoating with the Spanish flu, with SARS, with MERS, with HIV when it was first called gay-related infectious disease, and with COVID-19 when it was labeled as the Chinese virus or Kung flu. What that leads to is shaming, people not wanting to seek care, and then also indirectly other people thinking that they're not affected because they're not in the specific demographic who is most at risk. So it comes down with a balance of reminding people that monkeypox is a human virus, but right now there is a group who is most at risk where resources and awareness should be directed. It has to be a bimodal approach.
Now, the CDC is also investigating this new case of polio in Rockland County, New York. The New York Health Department says that it has seen 7 different wastewater samples with polio in that same area. So how worried should we be about this? What's the context here?
This is a symptom of a massively grave problem, Diane. We have not had our first case of polio originating in the United States since 1979. The last foreign case, 2013. So what this tells us right now is that we are not done with these viruses, these infections that could be prevented from vaccination. In Rockland County, the estimated polio vaccination rate for kids age 2 is about 60%. We need at least 80% for herd immunity. If we see a spread of polio, it could be absolutely devastating for the thousands of kids in the United States and worldwide who are not protected. We don't want to go back to the late 40s or early 50s when thousands and thousands of kids were left paralyzed from a disease that should be eradicated.
Now, August, ironically, is also Vaccine Awareness Month. So what should parents know about childhood vaccines? Has anything changed?
You know, simply put, parents should know that the reason that they may not have heard of or be as familiar with diseases such as diphtheria, Haemophilus influenza B, polio, pneumococcal meningitis is because vaccines work. And they've done an incredible job at preventing these diseases. The CDC estimates that for children born in the last 20 years, childhood vaccines will prevent 21 million hospitalizations and 730,000 deaths. And with vaccination rates slightly dipping right now because of hesitancy in the pandemic, we are at risk for seeing some of these diseases reemerge. Diane, I'll quickly tell you, at the March for Science in New York City, I was holding a sign about polio not being around anymore, and a woman approached me and told me a story about when she was in school in the 50s, the fear she felt when her classmates would leave because they were sick and not come back or come back paralyzed, and the hope the country felt when the polio vaccine came out in 1955. Those are feelings that we don't want to see again because we want to keep the diseases away. So make sure everyone out there asks the questions and gets their children vaccinated.
All right, Dr. Patel, we appreciate it as always. Thank you.
Thank you.
Coming up, the stories behind the images that marked international headlines during the U.S. withdrawal from Afghanistan 1 year later. The split-second decisions that saved lives when we return. Welcome back. We have breaking news. The Associated Press is reporting that Travis McMichael, one of the 3 men convicted of murdering Ahmaud Arbery as he jogged through a Georgia neighborhood in 2020, has been sentenced to life in prison for committing a federal hate crime. A jury convicted Travis McMichael of federal hate crimes charges in February, along with his father, Greg McMichael, and neighbor William Roddy Bryan, concluding that the 3 violated Arbery's civil rights and targeted him because he was black. All 3 men were already serving life in prison after being found guilty of murder in a Georgia state court last fall. Greg McMichael and William Roddy Bryan are set to be sentenced on these hate crime charges later today. And it was 1 year ago that the last American troops left Afghanistan after America's longest war. We all remember those harrowing images as the Taliban took back control. And now we're learning more about the stories behind those images. Stories of heroism, compassion, and split-second decisions that saved lives. ABC News' George Stephanopoulos tells us more.
They were scenes marked by chaos and desperation. Hundreds of Afghan citizens running alongside a departing U.S. C-17. It was a stunning collapse. Chaos in the streets of Kabul. The Taliban now controls Afghanistan. The U.S. Embassy evacuated, all leading to the end of a 20-year war.
We've been a nation too long at war.
The Taliban back in control 2 decades after September 11th. America's longest war comes to a sobering end.
Every single U.S. service member is now out of Afghanistan.
Now, nearly a year after the U.S. withdrawal, the indelible images remain. A U.S. Marine lifting a baby over a barbed wire-topped wall at Kabul's airport.
The parent asked the Marines to look after the baby because the baby was ill. They treated the child and returned the child to the child's father.
And this photo, taken by Technical Sergeant Justin Triola. The U.S. Air Force 7-member crew Reach 871 made headlines around the world for their split-second decision to take 823 Afghan citizens who were fleeing the Taliban onto the jam-packed flight. Members of that team sat down with ABC News and revealed the dramatic details behind the viral image.
We're basically taxiing over where we're supposed to just deliver our cargo and pick up what was supposed to only be a few military working dogs. All of a sudden, we saw this rush of people. And then that's where, as a crew, we started talking through how we're going to handle this situation and how we were going to be able to accommodate them and make sure that they could safely get on our jet.
Obviously, we don't have 823 seats with seatbelts on board. It's designed to use cargo straps as seatbelts onto the floor. But with that many people, even that was impossible to do. So everybody was holding on to each other pretty much at that point.
A lot of the people coming on board, you can see they were really scared and nervous.
And there was nobody else on the ramp, so literally everybody that was flooding the ramp at that moment made it onto the aircraft.
640 adults and 183 children, a record for the C-17, built to carry a maximum of 171,000 pounds of cargo. Taken on board the flight bound for Qatar, this photo shows a toy from one of the pilots given to a baby. And this picture of a sleeping child using Senior Airman Nicholas Barron's military blouse as a blanket.
In flight, I hung my blouse up on a hook on the aircraft. It fell off, and the mother of the child kind of pointed to it, basically, in a sense, asking if she can put it on her child. And to see some of the children on board were kind of nervous and scared, and now they're relaxing and they're sleeping, kind of gave me a little ease of mind.
When we took off, I don't think it really sunk in yet. What we were doing besides the best we could to just save a bunch of lives and get people to safety. But I knew when we actually did take off, there was such a sense of relief.
Okay, how many people do you think are on your jet? 800 people on your jet? Holy cow.
I was calling back to make sure that we could get these folks immediate medical attention and get them the help that they would need. And the reaction from the individual that I was talking to, he's just like, there's no way. That's not even a thing. And I was like, no, we do.
Well, originally, I think I just took that photo for proof because I didn't think anybody would believe how many people we had on board. Then, I guess it just provided more hope for America and the refugees that we were able to help out.
George Stephanopoulos, thank you for that. And thank you for joining us. I'm Diane Macedo. Stay with us as ABC News Live continues with more news, context, and analysis.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.